a very warm welcome to everyone who is with us in the room today, and a very warm welcome to anyone who is catching this as a video replay. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I know that life is very busy as always, and as life begins to kind of move forward and we move out of lockdown, the next sort of phases, our lists and our sort of pools of needs are kind of piling up. So I do appreciate you finding the time to join us. I just really wanted to quickly share with you the impact that Northamptonshire Community Foundation has had, and indeed what our donors have helped us to do, and what our community groups have achieved through that funding. We launched the Coronavirus Response and Recovery Emergency Fund on Friday the 20th of March, which was the Friday before we went into the official lockdown, the first official lockdown in March of last year. And as a team, we saw that the pandemic was picking up pace. We could see that it was going to have a huge effect on our local community, and we knew we needed to do something about it. So we knew we had the support of our fund holders, of our friends, and of our fundraisers. So we launched this appeal, and I just want to show you a little bit about what we've seen in the last year. It'll be about 20-30 minutes. I won't keep you for too long because I know how busy everybody is, but I just want to take you through. And if I can, there we go. I'm going to take you back to 2020. I know we want to put it behind us now. About 2020, there's a few words that come to mind. So for me, it's things like lockdown, it's the furlough scheme, it's school closures and homeschooling. The word unprecedented, I've never said it so many times in my life as I have done in the last 12 months. Things like going out for 30 minutes per day for your daily exercise, missing family and friends. There's lots of words that will come to mind, and not all of them are going to be particularly positive when we think of 2020. However, there's other words that I certainly do think of when I think of last year, and they're things like community spirit. And for me, one of the ways that was really demonstrated was through the Clap for Carers that we did every Thursday at 8 p.m. For me in particular, that really showed community spirit, because I know that when I was sort of prior to the pandemic, I would see my neighbours as I jumped in my car on the way to work in the morning with a quick wave and hello, how are you? Or if I was kind of popping back from Tesco's with laden with bags, I might be like, hello, how are you doing? Whereas that sort of couple of minutes on the doorstep every single week meant that my whole street would come out. We would hear everyone clapping, everyone came together, and I had more deep conversations with my neighbours than I possibly ever had before. And I think sort of moments were so special, and that really was what 2020 gave us. And I think working for NCF, I saw what community spirit is fully through the last year, because of how everyone came together to make sure that our community groups could continue to go. So this presentation is really just to show you the pandemic through the eyes of Northamptonshire Community Foundation. So what we do at NCF is we fund our community. So we have, through the emergency appeal, supported 104,769 people. And that is just the amount of people that were funded through the emergency appeal itself. We actually did more funding, our normal funding alongside that, and we actually awarded over £2.5 million in total in the last year to our community groups. Through the R&R fund, we supported 11,284 volunteers. So they're the volunteers that are helping our community groups to keep going, giving up their time to ensure that the most vulnerable are cared for. We supported over 29,000 people who were facing financial hardship, over 17,000 vulnerable older people, and over 16,000 vulnerable families. Now, those numbers are staggering when you look at them, and to think it all came because of the generosity of our community. And each one of those statistics is an individual with their own story and their own experience of the pandemic. So I've chosen a few case studies that I'd like to share with you, which kind of dive a little bit deeper into those numbers and give you an idea of what some of our community groups were up to in the last year. So the first I'd like to show you is the Daylight Centre, which is based in Wellingborough and surrounding areas. And during the pandemic, they provided food supplies and hot meals for those that were in temporary accommodation, local residents and families. And they also set up village hubs and worked alongside local supermarkets for food donations. Again, if I take you back to the very early stages of the pandemic in 2020, you'll remember there was a lot of shortages in supermarkets. There was a lot of people that were very concerned. They would stockpile. Fruit and veg was hard to come by, but organisations like the Daylight Centre ensured that the most vulnerable people could still get hold of the food they vitally needed. They delivered 1,638 food parcels to over 1,500 individuals and families, which is amazing. Another really good example is the Lewis Foundation. So they provided care packs for head and neck cancer patients who were receiving treatment at Northampton General Hospital. And again, when we think of 2020, we definitely do think of hospital. We do think of the amount of admissions that were happening. We think of the Nightingale hospitals being set up. But cancer and other long-term conditions did not go away. There were still patients who desperately needed that care. They were in hospital still receiving the treatments such as radiotherapy. And actually they were going through this without the support of their family and friends, as they weren't able to have any visits. So these packs helped them to minimise the severe side effects of the treatment they were facing. And it included things like mouth rinse, toothpaste, toothbrush and lip balms. In total, they provided 100 packs to patients just in Northampton General, which is again fantastic. It just goes to show that even though we were all going through this pandemic, we were all going through this really tough time, there were community groups that were ensuring that those people that needed support for something other than COVID were still being supported. Another is the Wellingborough Homeless Forum. So the forum provided a safety net for 14 people experiencing homelessness and rough sleeping during COVID-19. They provided welfare check calls and access to food for vulnerable people who were moved into temporary accommodation. That included a support worker and a network of volunteers to make welfare check-up calls. The support also included arranging hot meals and food parcels, advice and welfare visits, liaising with other support agencies, helping complete forms and providing friendship. So the great thing here is it shows how one group, the Wellingborough Homeless Forum, liaised and worked with other agencies to ensure that full care was given to these 14 individuals. In this really tough time, we were all stretched. There was lots of things were closed, obviously, and it meant that these people were still able to get the access, the support they needed through a variety of agencies coming together to give them the support that they so vitally needed. And finally, the Late Northamptonshire. The charity provided free counselling support to people across the county, providing timely and appropriate support for people struggling with their mental health during COVID-19. Now, we all have mental health, and as we do with physical health, we all have times when we're in the peak of our mental health, we are feeling good, we're confident, and then we have times when we're not feeling as strong. There are some people, of course, who struggle with long-term conditions, and the COVID-19 crisis will have only exacerbated the conditions that they're suffering with already. They set up a new helpline to support people struggling with low-level mental health issues. And the helpline is managed by qualified counsellors, providing a listening and strategy support service to help people struggling with a variety of issues due to COVID-19. They supported 90 residents across Northamptonshire. And again, that's 90 people that desperately needed help and was able to access a free service by qualified counsellors, which was so important in a very difficult year for us all. One of the privileges we have of working at NCF is we get to hear the feedback that we get from our community groups on an almost daily basis. So I wanted to share some of that with you now, as this feedback really goes to our donors, our fund holders, our friends, our fundraisers, those people who support our work to enable us to do what we do. There's a few key words that I pull out of some of these feedbacks, things like we'll be able to help our families so much more over this difficult period. The funding has enabled us to manage this huge increase of demand on our services, and it's brought tears to our eyes when they share their stories and provide testimonials. And there's some really key parts of that you realise how much the impact of all of our friends, our fund holders, our donors have had on these individuals that so desperately needed them. And this feedback, of course, is from groups that have worked throughout the pandemic tirelessly to ensure that no one was left behind. So over the last 20 years, Northamptonshire Community Foundation has played a crucial role in supporting our local community with philanthropy, community leadership and grant-making services. The outbreak of the coronavirus created an unprecedented strain on the voluntary community sector and smaller charities. But we know that with the continued support of our donors, friends and fundraisers, we will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with our local community, ensuring no one is left behind. This year, NCF actually turns 20. On the 3rd of August, we celebrate a milestone of 20 years since NCF was created. Now, we've got a few plans as to how we can celebrate that 20 years, so do keep an eye out, as there's various ways you can get involved in helping us celebrate that milestone. And we know we're going to be here for another 20 years and beyond. We've shown what we can do in the last 20 years, and this last year has shown how quickly we can move when things get tough, and how we will stand by our local community, as will our donors and our fund holders, to ensure that no one is left behind. So really, all that's left for me to say is a really huge thank you on behalf of all of the trustees, staff and volunteers at Northamptonshire Community Foundation. I want to say a massive thank you to all of our donors, all of our friends, all our fund holders, anyone who's fundraised for us. And a huge thank you to all the representatives of the community groups we work with as well. We simply could not do what we do if we didn't have you supporting us. So a huge, huge thank you for everything you've done. If you'd like to learn anything more about what we do at Northamptonshire Community Foundation or how you can get involved, I popped my email address and my mobile number up on the screen now. And you can also go to our website, ncf.uk.com, where you can download your own copy of the impact review if you would like to. And there's a wealth of information on there about the work that we do, the groups we work with, and how you can get involved yourself.